Good evening and welcome to the Monday, May 22nd Maplewood City Council meeting. I wanted to start off tonight's meeting talking about the Cop on a Roof event that happened on Friday. It was very fun. And I will just say that I did get invited to go and be on the roof next year. And so if they invite me, next year, I will actually go and do the On the Roof event. But it was really fun. I got coffee, and I did go for the coconut donut. It was delicious. But the interesting thing about the events that we have, it got me thinking about how important our partners are, our business partners are in the community. And so I asked the police department to put together a list of some of the community partners that we share with and that help us out on some of these wonderful events that we have. And, you know, in particular, just driving through the drive-through at Dunkin' Donuts for that time period, they weren't making any profit. You know, if you make a donation to Special Olympics, then, you know, the business is handing out coffee and donuts to everybody. And so they're foregoing their profits in order for us to help Special Olympics. So our public safety department raised $1,547. In total, agencies throughout the state raised just over $36,000 for Special Olympics. So it was a great event. So thank you, Dunkin' Donuts. That really does make a difference, and you really helped us come through for Special Olympics. So the police department put together a list of some of the other community partners, and I certainly want to acknowledge them because our businesses are very important. Cub Foods provides police and fire with Halloween candy for our trunk or treat, and the occasional gift card that the police give away at senior bingo games over here at the community center, which are always welcome. Cub also supplies the root beer float supplies for National Night Out. So when we're out there for National Night Out on August 1st, we can tell people that this really came from Cub and that they're partnering with our city, which is great. Cub partners with the police department and fire department for our Fill the Boot event as well. Costco, thank you Costco. They provide food for several of our events like the summer grill outs and most recently the bike rodeo. And in addition, if you remember last winter, we partnered with Costco to run a successful winter clothing drive, which was a huge success. And I think we gave away like 600 coats or something. It was really quite impressive. Hy-Vee provides us with donuts for the Fallen Officer Memorial Ride, candy for Trunk or Treat, and supplies for this year's Easter egg hunt. Police and Fire also attended Hy-Vee's one-year anniversary celebration. The Goodrich Golf Dome, they provide the public with free mini golf for our Putt-Putt with Public Safety event, another business that is making a contribution in our community, which is great. Caribou Coffee, they provide coffee for the Fallen Officers Memorial Ride, and they were the site of several Coffee with a Cop events that we have had. Goodwill offers a discount when we purchase prizes for our senior bingo games, which is great. Thomson Reuters donated 10 to 15 bicycles a year so they can hand them, so the police department, public safety, can hand them out to children whose families cannot afford them. Thank you, Thomson Reuters, for that. Borchards Market, they provided gift cards for the Putt-Putt with Public Safety event. Strauss Skates and Bicycles, they provide rental skates for the Skate with Public Safety event each year. As I mentioned, Dunkin' Donuts partnered to raise money for Special Olympics. The YMCA of Maplewood, the YMCA allows our public safety officers to hold bingo games in their banquet room, and officers go over there for events. Let's see, Original Mattress Factory, we partner with Original Mattress Factory to hold a blanket drive each year. And Country Financial Buddy Martin provides all the fishing equipment, food, and other supplies for Fishing with Friends. I think we just had our first Fishing with Friends event just recently. And Buddy goes out all out for this event and has for many years. Without him, the event would not be successful. So I just wanted to acknowledge all of those businesses that partner with our public safety department to help with these great events and the contributions that they make to our community. I know that I did get another email today about, that's going to be part 2 for our next meeting. There's just so many of our local businesses that are partnering with our city to really help make these events a huge success. So I wanted to especially acknowledge them and thank them because it dawned on me what that means for a business to partner with the city and forego their profit, or to give items to the city so that we can distribute them during some of the events that we have. So thank you to our businesses. We really appreciate it. So, council members, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. City Clerk Sint, would you do the roll call for us, please?
Councilmember Juniman?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Present.
Councilmember Villavicencio?
Here.
Councilmember Cave?
Here.
Mayor Abrams?
I'm here as well, thank you. Council members, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Kate, seconded by Lee, the motion to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Lee.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. Just a quick, for council presentation, a little update on JB Vang project.
Okay. I would like to add a legislative update. Anyone else? Councilmember Juniman.
A little late, but nonetheless, National Law Enforcement Week.
Okay. All right, I think we've got it all then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Council members, let's move on to the approval of the minutes. This is our May 8th, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the May 8th, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Appointments and presentations. City Manager Coleman, this is your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams, members of the City Council. Upcoming agenda items include, at our next meeting on June 12th, we'll have a workshop with the Met Council to talk about the engagement process for the consideration of White Avenue for the Purple Line, BRT. And at the council meeting, we're going to hear from MnDOT on some highway improvements they're going to make on Highway 36 this summer. And we're also going to talk about the public comment policy and review some options there. On June 26th, we'll have an EDA meeting to review the TIF plan and development agreement with Reuter Walton for the project in Gladstone. At the council meeting, we'll have the Community Development Department updates, project updates. And then I also wanted to let you know that if you recall from our meeting last 2 weeks ago, Mayor Abrams had reported that she had a meeting with the government relations person from 3M, and she was going to give us some dates to go tour the Innovation Center. And that date has been established. It's June 8th at 3 p.m. And I will send you out a calendar invitation so you can get it on your calendar. That will be, I think, as the mayor described it a couple weeks ago, a really interesting opportunity to see kind of what they're doing down there. And I've heard some good things about it besides from the mayor, so I'm looking forward to that. And then just to remind you that the major community outreach events, in your packet there was a short list, and tonight I passed out the long list. So you'll be able to plan accordingly and get those on your calendar. There's several events, as you can see. Many of them are really kind of geared for the police department to go visit, but certainly you're invited to any or all of those events, should you choose to do so. Mayor, I don't have any other items unless the council members have some other topics of concern or interest that they'd like us to report back on.
Okay, council members, does anyone have anything for Ms. Coleman? Okay, seeing none, then let's move on to council presentations. Councilmember Lee, you wanted to speak about JB Vang.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick update for the council. I know this last council meeting we approved the affordable housing project on Frost and English. Moving forward with that, I had some questions around the property itself, having it being a funeral home, to see if JB Vang would have thought about looking into a little bit more, given that it's a spiritual ground. So just wanted to report back to the council. I had a great conversation with JB Vang, Ku Vang, who is the owner, president and CEO of JB Vang. That has already been in conversation. They're talking about that already, so they are going to be looking at doing a cleansing ceremony before the closing of the property. So that's just in preparation to make sure that the project is going to go well. So I'm very happy to hear that. It is required as part of their award that they look into the components of the historical components of the property itself, making sure that having it being a Hmong funeral home, if there are enough Hmong funeral homes in the area to serve the Hmong community itself in general. So they're taking all the approach necessary to be mindful of the community itself. I'm very happy with that.
Thank you very much. I wanted to do just a little bit of a legislative update. We got some very good news about the bonding bill. Thank you to our fire chief and our public safety director. They put together a proposal to receive $75,000 in pre-development funding to actually do drawings and schematics. Is that correct, Chief? Thank you, nodding your head out there. Thank you. To really to build on to the wonderful training facility that we have in Maplewood already. It is primarily a fire training center, but this would permit us to come up with plans along with the Joint Powers Authority that exists there to develop that into a joint fire, EMS, and police training center, because we know that the calls that people get today are much more complex. We're working with social workers now in our departments, and so, but there really isn't any training that really meets all of those new needs. And so the first step is getting pre-development money so that we can have architects and drafters work on what might this look like. And then once we have that, then we go back to the legislature and then we seek additional funding in order to pay for this wonderful training facility that I think is really going to be state-of-the-art and is going to really address fire, EMS, and police. We already know that many departments come from all over to use our training facility located here in Maplewood, and this is really going to make it something that I think will serve all of our communities well, because in the calls that our departments are getting, police and fire and EMS all have to work together. And we have to be able to incorporate social workers. And how do we do that? Well, we want really well-trained officers that can train for scenario-based issues, and they can be there all working together. And so this is really the first step. But the legislature passed it. It was included in the bonding bill. The next step is that the governor has already indicated that he's going to sign the bill. And so then we can get started. Chief Mondor can get started. I said we, but it's really going to be you and Public Safety Director Beardeman. And
don't forget
and
me.
City Manager Coleman.
And I'd like to say something when you're done.
Yeah, and start working with developing those plans, because I want to be able to go back to the legislature and get some money so that we can actually build that out. We need that to help public safety and to help all of our communities. It just makes so much sense. So that is really great news. The legislature came through, and City Manager Coleman wanted to say something as well.
I just wanted to say that the heavy lifting is about to begin. So once we start that planning process, that's sort of the easy part. We're going to have to get a consultant on board and do that. But we're really going to have to bring in all those partners that you mentioned that share the training facility with us. But we also, all of you will be somehow involved, I'm guessing. When we did this for the Fire Training Center, I was here and we had to arrange bus tours and lobby, and it's very intensive work. So one of the things we might want to consider too is whether we want to help the help of a lobbyist perhaps on this, because it takes a lot of hands to get something like this done through the legislature. So there'll be some big time work ahead, but if we get this done, it'll be a huge payoff for our community and the region.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's something to look forward to. So, yeah. Okay, so that's good news. Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll take the responsibility. I should have brought this up last meeting, but because last week was National Law Enforcement Week, and I do know that there were some officers from Maplewood that were involved, so I was hoping the chief could update us.
Madam Mayor, Council, thank you. Yeah, we were involved all last week, was Law Enforcement Week. We had the Ramsey County Suburban Agency ceremonies on Thursday, and then we also had officers down at the Capitol as well, standing guard and ringing the bell for all the fallen officers. So, and I believe this week is EMS week, correct? So that goes out to the fire and EMS.
Thank you. And Mayor, I neglected to add one more item, so if you'll give me a little latitude, it's just a quick update from dispatch policy.
Sure.
They met at our new fire station, North Fire Station, last week, and they were quite impressed. As a matter of fact, they want to come back for the August meeting. But one thing that came out at the meeting that I thought would be of interest to us in particular, more than maybe any other community, is that they are now going to have embedded social workers at the comm center.
Wow. Oh, nice.
So they will be able to communicate with the embedded social workers in the departments, and there'll be some cutting of wasted time, shall we say. And so there are 3, I believe, that they're going to be working in the comm center. So that's really good news.
That's amazing.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay, moving on, council members, to our consent agenda. We have 2 items. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move consent agenda items number G1 and G2.
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Lee. Consent agenda items G1 through 2. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. We have no public hearings tonight, no unfinished business. We have new business tonight. The 3rd tobacco violation of Maplewood Tobacco. City Clerk Sint, this is your topic tonight. Council members, since this is a hearing, I thought what I would do is kind of outline how this is going to go. We're going to hear first from City Clerk Sint. She's going to give us the staff report. And then I understand that we have an attorney here, Benjamin Letcher, is that correct? Yes. Thank you. I will ask him then to come up to the dais, and then he will make his presentation on behalf of the business owner, Mr. Al-Jimandi. And then I am going to then ask Mr. Beatty for him to give us an explanation. And then after we have heard from those 3 individuals, then we are going to have our discussion. And if you have questions, that's fine, you can ask them at that time, but I really want to hear first from City Clerk Sint, then from Attorney Letcher, and then from our City Attorney Ron Beatty. So, City Clerk Sint, would you begin, please?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So as you said, tonight we're going to be hearing about the 3rd tobacco violation for Maplewood Tobacco LLC, which is located at 2251 Larpenter Avenue. And I just want to make sure you understand there are actually 2 Maplewood Tobacco stores in Maplewood that they go by the same name. That's why I'm using LLC behind it, because there's one that just goes by Maplewood Tobacco, and I don't want to get that confused. So just in general, we had some changes with the penalties with the last update and to the ordinance. And so just want to remind you, the first violation is $300. The second violation is $600. And then the third violation is a mandatory $1,000, and then either a suspension of 7 days or more, or $1,000 and a revocation of their license. And as the licensing authority, you at the City Council are only engaged in the first and second violations if the licensee appeals the violation. Otherwise, you bill them and they just pay, and you are never notified of it. The third violation has to come before council because there has to be a decision made as to the length of the suspension or if it's a revocation. So specifically in this case, in March of this year, we received a notice from the Department of Revenue that they had seized tobacco contraband in December of '22 from Maplewood Tobacco LLC, as the store was unable to produce the proper invoices. And the notice further said the seizure had not been judicially challenged within the 60-day period that they are provided, and thus the product was forfeited to the state. Now, since all businesses who hold a tobacco product license are responsible to restrict the sale of tobacco to any person in a manner or form prohibited by either federal or state law, the city cites these instances as a violation. December was not the first time the city was notified that Maplewood Tobacco LLC had had seized tobacco contraband. The first time was in June of 2021 for a seizure that occurred in April of 2021. And we assessed them a $300 penalty, and they paid it. Then in October of 21, during a Maplewood PD annual compliance check, they failed their compliance check by selling to an underage person. This was their second violation within the 36-month period, and a penalty of $600 was assessed to them, and they paid that. Therefore, when we received the letter in March this year, it was a third violation within the 36 months that is allowed by state statute and our city code. And actually, it was within 24 months, if we actually look at the calendar. So you had in the report the notices from the Department of Revenue, and then later we did send you the applicant's attorney's letter so that you could have that to consider along with the staff report. So tonight, as you said, you'll hear Maplewood Tobacco's appeal, and council will be asked to first determine if indeed there was a third violation in December. And if yes, there are some motions on page 55 that we're looking for. So the first one would be, yes, there was a third violation. They have to pay $1,000, and there's a suspension of 7 or more days, and that would be up to council to decide, and also the dates of when that suspension would happen. And you also could decide that instead of the suspension, it's a $1,000 fine and a revocation of their license. And then we'd also want to know what date that revocation took effect. And if council would decide that no, there was not a third violation, we need a motion to strike from the city records the violation, or if there was something else that council decided was a more appropriate action, we would need that in a motion. And so the other thing I just want to point out is with that, as you'll read in the motions, staff will then take that information and come back on the June 12th meeting with a resolution for council to make the final decision. So with that, I would say you can have the applicant give their appeal.
Thank you very much. Mr. Letcher, would you like to approach, please? Welcome. Please state your name for the record.
Yeah, good evening. It's Benjamin Letcher, Loetscher, with the Ferdinand Peters Law Firm. And as I mentioned to Ms. sent via email as well, I appreciate that she accommodated and the council accommodated my client and myself by allowing us to make that submission on Friday. And I won't sort of restate the entire letter, but certainly would be here during the discussion or at any time to answer any questions that anyone might have. But the takeaway intended from the letter wasn't to engage so much in the fact that I believe as a legal matter, my client has a legal defense that it's not a third violation of either Minnesota law or the city ordinance based on their plain language, but that my client does take these violations seriously and to show the council what happened in response to the last two that were mentioned, the first one being the compliance check. Since then, I know that there's been, I didn't supply the certificate, but I have it. There was a compliance check in November of 22 that was passed, and then just in May, there was another compliance check that was also passed, and my client has procedures in place to ensure that there are going to be no more compliance checks failures, and those are for the underage. And then we do acknowledge, I'm not disputing the underlying facts as to what happened under Minnesota law. There's a requirement that the Department of Revenue can make an inspection and demand that all invoices for all product in the store be produced within 1 hour. And if they're not all found within an hour, then whatever doesn't have an invoice accompanying it may be seized and declared contraband. In this case, it was around $2,400 worth of product. And my client, rather than file a complaint and spend a lot more than $2,400 challenging the Department of Revenue, focused on putting in a new system. And I put a photo of the new filing system that's in place there in reverse chronological order, all the invoices that get put in the drawers. so that if, and in fact, in February, the Department of Revenue came back and found no violation. So that's what my client is doing. Obviously, my client's devoted to, maintaining the business that's been built and has a lease and other obligations, employees and so forth, but wants the council to know that they take what happened seriously. And so what I posed in the letter as sort of an alternative motion, if the council were to agree that there wasn't in fact a violation, that my client would nevertheless accept a $1,000 penalty and a 7-day suspension to show that even if they're correct, as is my opinion, that it's not actually a violation, that they would show that they're serious by nevertheless accepting that. Nevertheless, what I'm asking the council to do is to find that there's no violation, but to accept the proposal of the applicant that a $1,000 fine be paid. And I can just go briefly through it, but as far as the legal defense under Chapter 461, that's there primarily to deal with underage compliance and ways that cigarettes and tobacco are made available, so you can't have vending machines or kiosks or other mobile sales, things that are going to increase the likelihood of an underage sale. But it certainly does, and I acknowledge that, permit local municipalities like the city of Maplewood to have stricter rules. But based on the plain language of the ordinance, it's directed, again, like Chapter 461, at sales. So it's saying a sale by a person to another person in violation of law. And here, this, under Chapter 297, which is regulated by the Department of Revenue, they have a lot of powers there to revoke licenses, to assess civil and criminal penalties, and they've already seized it as contraband, and that was a loss to my client. But under that scheme, it's even acknowledged that they're trying to reach the sale of products, but then they're also trying to reach inventory if not held out for sale. And so they do distinguish in the language that there's two different targets. And here, what was addressed was a seizure of inventory for which there were no invoices. And I don't believe the plain language of the city code wants to get involved in that decision by the Department of Revenue. And again, the city council and mayor will be the ultimate determiner, and I don't have the experience to know what's been done in the past and how it's been read. But just my reading of the plain language is that it doesn't reach it and would then be deemed vague. But again, my client doesn't want to get into that issue, and if it were, even though preferably not a suspension coming out of COVID, businesses have been suffering, and now the weather is improving, and finally having better business, that a suspension is a drastic penalty, but that would nevertheless be accepted to again show my client's serious response to the notice. So unless there's anything that wanted to be raised now.
Thank you, Mr. Letcher.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beatty, we'll turn to you now.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I think the council has two decisions to make tonight. The first one is to determine how many violations have occurred within the last 36 months. And the second decision is what sort of penalty should be imposed as a result of that. And the answer to the first question is going to inform the answer to the second question, because the statute is pretty clear as to what those penalties are. There are two relevant sources of law on this. One is the statute, and one is the city code. They have similar but not identical language. And that's okay, because, as has been repeated here tonight before, the statute specifically allows licensing authorities, the city, to have more restrictive regulations than the statute. So the fact that the city code's language is broader and more restrictive, which I believe it is completely consistent with state law. And so to make your determination about how many violations have occurred, you just need to find that there have been violations under one or the other sources of law, either the statute or the ordinance. You don't have to find that there have been violations under both. I think the argument under the city code is the clearer of the two, because what the code says is that it shall be a violation of this article for persons to sell or offer to sell any licensed product, and then there are 6 violations that can occur. They're the ones that you would expect to a person under age 21 by means of a vending machine, through self-service merchandising. But then the final one is to sell or offer to sell to any other person in any other manner or form prohibited by federal or state law, which is a fairly broad statement. Prohibited by federal or state law. Of the 3 violations, the second one, chronologically, was the selling to an underage person. So there's no doubt that that's a violation of one of the provisions here. The other 2, as we've heard, were violations of state law in the sense of selling or offering to sell product that was deemed to be contraband. Contraband is product that is either purchased from an unlicensed seller, or where the tax hasn't been paid, or where you can't prove that the tax has been paid. The Department of Revenue does enforce that. As was been stated, licensees have a limited period of time to produce that information, and when they can't, there's a violation, although they're then given an opportunity to challenge that in court. And in both, they have 60 days to file an appeal to say why they think that the Department of Revenue's action was improper. In neither of the previous cases was that challenge. So that material was deemed to be contraband and was seized by the state. So what it ends up being is selling, or at least offering to sell, product that is considered contraband. I think that the city's ordinance is broad enough when it says that you can't offer it in any manner or form prohibited by state or federal law. I think that falls within that. So I'm comfortable that there have been 3 violations under the city's code, which then leads you to, and so you're going to have to make a determination as to whether you believe that that's the case. And then the penalty will flow from that, because, again, the ordinance is pretty clear that with the first violation, it's a $300 fine, which has been assessed and paid. Second violation is $600 fine, mandatory. That's been assessed and paid. The third is a mandatory $1,000 fine and a minimum 7-day suspension. The suspension can be longer, or you could substitute a revocation, but the minimum is the $1,000 fine and a 7-day suspension. So again, I think your analysis is determine how many violations have occurred, then determine what the penalty is, and the action then would be to direct staff to prepare a resolution consistent with your findings that would be then brought back to the following meeting. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Beatty. Council members, this is now our opportunity to have a discussion, and certainly if anyone has any questions for the 3 people that have presented, we can certainly get those questions answered. I have to say, from my perspective, I'm never comfortable, in these kinds of situations. I started our meeting tonight talking about how much we've really appreciate our businesses, and that Maplewood is open for business. And this is certainly challenging, but I have to say that we have expectations here in Maplewood as to how you're going to conduct your business. I certainly read through the letter from the attorney we got it last week, and then we got the hard copy tonight. In looking at all of the facts and, based on our own city ordinance, I believe that there were 3 violations. I don't have a question about that. I certainly don't want to be in this position, but you've put us into this position, sir. And it's something that I believe that there were 3 violations, and my recommendation is that we go with the $1,000 fine and the 7-day suspension. I believe that our city ordinance requires that is mandatory. I am not interested in a revocation at this time. Continued problems, and that, my opinion, certainly will change. But we expect our businesses are going to follow the law, and as uncomfortable as I know it is for me, I'm certainly believing that it's probably uncomfortable for council members as well. We don't like to be in this position, but our ordinances have to mean something, and they have to be applied to everyone because we want our business owners to be following the law. So that is my thought, that there were 3 violations, and I'm in favor of the $1,000 fine and the 7-day suspension. I would also indicate for the resolution that the resolution would go into effect the following day after we vote. It would be on a Monday night. So the following Tuesday morning, that the suspension for 7 days would begin on that day. That would be my thoughts. Council members, no lights on yet. What are your thoughts? Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with you on that piece, Mayor. We hold our businesses here to a very high standard, and I also do believe that there has been 3 violations. I am also not in favor of revoking the license at the current time, but I am in favor of the $1,000 in the 7 days. I do have a concern, though, in terms of your track record, paper records and everything, and the process that you're currently doing it in the format that it is in right now. I see you have it in totes and you have it labeled by the business, but are you keeping any of it electronically at all for future references, for future audits or anything like that? What are your plans to process to that? Is there any plans to streamlining that process?
No, just but I put them on an organized way. I show them the picture from my attorney, so everything is organized, and then you manage it for the store. But I promise, I follow the rules. I have no intention, anything in my mind to be against any of the rules. But it's a small business family I'm running it, so it's like we keep it in my emails, everything, the invoices and other things that they need to it. But the problem is I was not able to provide all the invoices in an hour because they put me in like a short time, and I was in overseas at that time. So this is one of the problem I faced.
I think where my concern comes is also having it in the current format that it's in. If you're going to have an hour to produce the invoices again, that's going to be a conflict again, because you're going to have to sort through all of the invoices again. So, I would like to see, this is definitely your business and the way you operate it, but, my recommendation is would look into it a little bit more to see if there's a better way to streamline that current process. We would hate to see you in this situation again. I want you to be successful. I want your business here in Maplewood, and we want you to be successful, so.
Thank you. Councilmember Cave.
I would agree with my council members on that there was 3 violations, the $1,000, and I was looking at more than 7 days, but I think I can go with the 7 days. I'm concerned with the other businesses out there, that they don't see if they have violations, that they see what we do. We have to have a standard here in Maplewood. We do want businesses. We want you to stay here in Maplewood. But I would also agree with my council member Lee that, I don't want to tell you how to run your business at all, but if something has to be pulled within an hour, I think something electronically, you're going to have to look at that, because if you're already under the radar or, on the radar, chances are you're going to get looked at again. And I feel it's going to be, if something happens again, it's going to be tougher than this.
Thank you. If your attorney would like to step up here, if you would like to respond, you're welcome to come up here, please.
Do you want to hear from? I think he just is trying to show that he is earnest, and we'll certainly talk about having everything scanned in so that there's an alternate way to email it over rather than having to find it. But I think he's saying, predicting that they already came back in February and complimented them on their system and said it was all in order, and they passed, and so that's why he felt that it was sufficient. But the council has good thoughts, so if there were a fire or theft or something else, to have a backup is a good idea.
And certainly they're just
Yeah.
suggestions. It's
Yeah.
not anything that we can require at
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
but.
We just don't want to see you back up here again.
Right.
Thank you
So
so
we're
much.
trying to help you do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to say they are already the first second.
Yeah.
So right now, everything organized in the store.
Okay.
So thank you.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Point of clarification, so the clear check, did that happen after the December 22 seizure, or there has not been a clear check?
City Clerk Sint, could you answer that?
Are you talking, Mayor and Council, are you talking about a compliance check?
Yes.
So I understand the PD went out a couple of weeks ago and did what they call an educate and congratulate round, where nobody is charged, but it just keeps them on their toes, and they did pass.
Okay, thank you. And I agree with my other council members and mayor here.
Okay. Councilmember Juniman.
Yes, I agree. Actually, I'm with Rebecca. I would like to see a longer suspension, but that's based on the fact that we do have standards and we want everyone to follow them. And being disorganized or having a hard luck story isn't an excuse. So, because if it was, then everybody could do that. So ordinances are to be followed. And just like the sale of alcohol, the sale of tobacco is overseen by the state, and then we have ordinances besides. That's simply to make the point. We think this is important and we think it's serious. And the fact that it was a second seizure was the one that was the hot button for me. It's like, so if it hadn't happened again, would you have organized it? I don't know. But it's not a very good way to run a business. And it's to your own benefit, as the others have said, to back this up somehow so that you don't get into this predicament again. Because like the mayor, if you come back, I won't be talking about how many days suspension. I will be after revocation. It's a serious thing to not follow ordinances. And like she said, we want you to succeed. And we wouldn't spend this kind of time with you if we didn't. But we also want you to know that it's serious to violate state law and our local ordinances. It's very serious. And it's not something that we want you to forget about. So I agree with the mayor, although I also agree with Councilmember Cave. I would like to see a longer suspension, but I guess we can like the 7 days.
Council members, would someone like to make, Mr. Beatty, do we need to
Can
do
I ask for
anything else?
clarification?
Oh, sir, just,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I got two people on.
Let him go.
Well, the answer to your question, no, someone needs to make a motion
Sure.
to direct staff to bring back an appropriate resolution, which would include, as the mayor suggested, if there's going to be a suspension, the date that should begin. And we'll bring that back to the June 12th, I believe it is, meeting, the next
date
meeting.
has to be in there, right?
Okay. Thank you for that. And Council,
Clarification?
do you have point of clarification?
So I think he clarified it, but I want to make sure I understood it. So when it comes back to us in 2 weeks, that should have the date of the revocation in it?
Yes, what I would expect is a resolution that makes a finding that there have been 3 violations, that the penalty will be the mandatory $1,000 fine, that there will be apparently a 7-day suspension beginning on June 13th, is what I'm hearing.
Okay, thank you. Council members, would someone like to make that motion? I'll move to direct staff to prepare a resolution finding 3 violations have occurred within 36 months and requiring Maplewood Tobacco LLC 2251 Larpenteur Avenue East, to pay the mandatory fine of $1,000 within 30 days and to suspend sale of licensed product for 7 days, beginning on July 13th through,
June 13th.
sorry, what did I, June 13th, thank you. June 13th through, would that be June 20th?
The end of day.
Okay, there's the motion.
Second.
Moved by Abrams, seconded by Cave. I won't read it again, I think you got it. It's rather long. Any further discussion? Councilmember Juniman.
I would like it to be understood that I would make it longer if I could do it by myself. And that we are serious about, please don't come back here, because you will force us to do something more serious.
Thank you. We've had a motion and a second and some discussion. And let's see, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much. And I say very respectfully, I hope that we never have to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council members, we have no further business tonight. And so with that, we are adjourned.